The story of Varnamtown is getting nationwide and Hollywood attention thanks to the book by Lynn Cook Betts called My Right Hand to Goodness, The Life and Times of Crazy Dale Varnam. Now, in this episode, we delve into how all this media attention actually happened. Hi, everybody. John Daly here with the Carolina Buzz, and this is our fourth episode about Varnamtown's crazy past. Now, here's how this all transpired. Lynn, the author, told her story to a friend of Hollywood producer Desiree Gruber. Desiree's husband is Twin Peaks actor Kyle MacLachlan, who is friends with Josh Davis, an investigative reporter and the editor of Epic magazine, which led to Josh and Kyle to create the 8-episode podcast called Varnamtown.
And off we went. We spent 6 days in Varnamtown, talking with all the people, many of the people, not all, but many of the people that had participated in this in the story.
Well, I was intrigued, but I was also a little skeptical. Like, what are the chances that Pablo Escobar would have done a deal with a town of 300 people? It sounds ludicrous. But then once I started looking into it, doing some public records searches, I discovered that there was a lot of law enforcement activity in the area in the 1980s, like a lot. And that kind of opened up the possibility to me that something serious was in fact happening in Brunswick County.
Now, I had a chance to do a Zoom interview with Kyle and Josh to explore the craziness of the story and also the different versions that the book and the podcast reveal.
Now, I've read Lynn's book, listened to your podcasts, and then talked to people from around here. And it's like, I can't get a full feel of what's the real story and what's the surreal fantasy or what's going on here. Do you guys feel the same thing too?
Yes.
Yes. We do too. It feels like when we showed up in Varnamtown, there was a lot of Kyle and I looking at each other saying, what is happening here? What is real? What's not real? How much of this is tall tales? Is it legend? Is it real? And we would ping pong between the two. When we would go talk to law enforcement, we talked to Mike Grimes, who was leading the DEA investigation on the area. We spoke to Mike Easley, the former governor who was the prosecutor at the time. And they said there was a massive amount of drugs coming into the area. The question was, what role did Dale Varnam play? Did he, in fact, do a deal with Pablo Escobar? And did the town en masse do a deal with Pablo Escobar?
I first heard the story, and it was the Dale Varnam version of the story as told through Lynn Betts. And so that's what we started with. And then you begin to dig a little deeper and you talk to some of the other people that were involved, and everyone had a different perspective on what happened, who was involved, how much they were involved. So it was Josh and my job really to sort of figure out where the truth lay, and we came away, I think, scratching our heads. We weren't completely sure. We didn't really come around and say, okay, we've solved the case and here's the answer. We came away saying, well, we've got more questions.
And there are a number of reasons for the mystery. Now, it could be time. The story is more than 30 years old. It could also be that people have altered the story over the years to protect themselves or to protect Varnamtown. Or
my perspective is that from Dale's perspective, he viewed himself as the kingpin. And there are a number of people that he did business with back then who also viewed him as the kingpin. But it's possible that he was the kingpin in a relatively small area. He might have just been the kingpin in Varnamtown. And it's possible that there were bigger fish out there. Certainly law enforcement came to the conclusion that there were much larger players in the Brunswick County area. But at the same time, law enforcement at the beginning believed Dale Varnam. They believed what he was saying. They believed that he was the kingpin, that he had done this massive deal with South America to bring cocaine into Varnamtown. But in the end, law enforcement decided that Dale was not who he said he was.
They were pretty adamant that Dale wasn't the person that he said he was, in particular Mike Grimes, and that there was a much larger network involved in this. There were more powerful players in this, and a couple of them, some of the names that we unearthed, they didn't factor into the podcast as it began to unfold, during our research, and so we have other avenues of people that we know were involved, but again, to what degree and how deep it went, more questions would be needed.
And Lynn agrees about the differences between her book and the podcasts.
In fact, some episodes I think, wow, they're coming to a different conclusion, but then it kind of turns back and leaves the person listening up in the air until the next episode, and so you kind of wait and see. But I think so. I mean, they interviewed the same people, but they interviewed a couple more people and many less than I did. I interviewed many more people. So you get the perspectives that would bring that may be somewhat different. And of course, I delve so much more in depth and create parts of the story that the podcast, because of its limitations in time and duration, couldn't even touch. So there are differences.
Again, I highly recommend reading Lynn's book, which became available on March 12th, 2024. I also urge you to listen to Kyle's and Josh's podcast called Varnamtown that you can get on most podcast services. Tell us what your thoughts are on their findings. And in our next episode here, we'll explore how Varnamtown will most likely be a streaming TV series fairly soon, and we ask you who would play what roles. Keep it tuned to the Carolina Buzz on WingDing's business channel, offering businesses their own shows along with cutting-edge social media and digital marketing with a worldwide reach to millions. Check it out and see if we can help your business. And stay tuned for more on Varnamtown here on the Carolina Buzz.